Thank you for joining this Lanham EDI session on EDI 101. My name is Charlotte Martinez and I'm the Senior EDI Specialist at Lanham Associates. Today we hope to give you a brief understanding of EDI, how it works, and how to get started with the new trading partner. So what is EDI? EDI stands for Electronic Data Interchange, and it's the computer-to-computer exchange of business documents in a standard electronic format between business partners. Now you'll see here I've highlighted the word standard. It is supposed to be standardized, but there are differences between different trade partners. Let's also go over a few of the common EDI terms that I'll be using today. First is trading partner. A trading partner is the entity with whom you do business. For example, Walmart or Amazon. They'll contact you and say, we would like to start trading via EDI. Whenever you're trading with EDI, it eliminates human interaction because the files are electronically sent and received and create the associated documents. A VAN is a value-added network. Not all trade partners require that you go through a VAN, but some of them do. And think of that as the post office. That's where all the files go and they sit there until something is done with them. Translator. It's an individual program that facilitates the exchange of files in a specified format. Next, you have documents. The EDI documents are specific individual transactions representing a specific business process. So think of that as a letter. Some common numbers for EDI documents, specifically in the X12 format, is an 850. So if my trading partner is Walmart and I will be shipping to Walmart, so they're the customer and I am the vendor, they might send me what's called an 850, and an 850 is a purchase order. So coming from their system, it's a purchase order. When it comes into NAV, that's going to create a NAV sales order. Some of the EDI standards are ANSI X12, which is what I'll be using today. It's the most commonly used format here in the United States. EDIFACT is commonly used in Europe, and then there's also the XML protocol. Translator, we're going to think of the mapping. That's the Lanham EDI product, and we'll actually do a little bit of mapping. Then you've got your document flow options. Your trading partner will tell you, if they are the customer, what options they want. If they want to go through a VAN, or if they want to do a direct connection, where it's directly connecting you with them. And lastly, you will need some sort of EDI communication software. At Lanham Associates, we recommend the Clio Lexicom software. We're very familiar with how it works. And basically, it's a piece of software sitting outside of your firewall that's listening for files to be received and or sent. And all it does is shoots files back and forth. Here you'll see at the bottom left, I've got direct connection, AS2, FTP, FTPS. So that's coming from my trade partner. And then you've got the communication software in the middle. That would be Lexicom, possibly. And then once that file has hit Lexicom, it's going to be delivered somewhere on your network. And that will be the raw EDI file, and it'll sit out there until the Lanham EDI software grabs it. So with here on the right-hand side of the screen, I've got the NAV database. So for example, with the Walmart sending of an 850 scenario, the file has come in, it's gone through Lexicom, it's sitting on the network, and then it's going to use the EDI mapping tool to translate that file, and it will create on the EDI side an EDI received document, and then that will therefore, because it's an 850, create the NAV sales order. Then I'm going to process that sales order, maybe ship and invoice it, and then I'm going to send out my outbound files. 810 is an invoice, so it will sit on the EDI send document side, go through the EDI mapping tool, and then now I have a file out there that I'm waiting for Lexicom to pick up and then deliver via the Lanham VAN or the direct connection, just depending upon what the trade partner and the user have agreed upon. This is just a small example of how the Clio Lexicom piece works. Again, you're not required to use Lexicom, but I did want to show you so it kind of completes the flow of how EDI files delivered and received. So here on the left side of the screen, I've got Clio Lexicom, and you'll see here I've got the Lanham VAN set up. and it's set up to collect and send data. And I've got my file path specified here. So for example, that inbound 850, it's going to come and be delivered to my C Lanham EDI Gen 2 Common Receive folder. And it's going to sit there until the nav piece picks up. So over here on the right side, I've got my EDI setup page. So this is a Lanham page. And I've got my Common Receive file path, and you'll see the two match. So this is where, whenever you're inside nav, it knows to look for files. Now, going on the outbound, for example, that 810, once we invoice that order, over here in Clio Lexicon, I've got my outbox specified as C Lanham EDI Gen 2 Lexicon outbox. So it's looking for files in this directory. And on the right side of the screen, I've got the Lanham EDI template with the same interface file path. So this is where files are going to be delivered when we go outbound within nav, and then the file will get picked up through Lexicon, and then Lexicon will send it. This is using the Lanham ban option, but any ban or direct connection that you do have set up. So what makes Lanham EDI different from any other EDI solution out there? Well, Lanham EDI is natively built inside nav for maximum visibility, efficiency, and seamlessly simple control. The mapping tool is located within nav, referencing nav tables and fields that you're already familiar with. Also, we have easy handling of cross-references. So for example, in our EDI files, the trade partner might reference their part number, and we need to cross-reference that to the nav part number. And so we would handle that in the cross-reference table. And then we also have traceability. When a file comes in via EDI, it's automatically tagged with the number, and that number is going to stick with it throughout the process flow. So for example, that 850 comes in, creates a nav sales order, it's tagged with that number. I ship and invoice it, it's still tagged with that same number. So from one central location, I can see the history of that document and what's been done with it. Also, the Lanham philosophy is that EDI documents are held in their normal nav location. For example, that posted sales invoice looks just like a posted sales invoice, whether you created it via EDI or manually. As well as the EDI documents that nav does not have a location, we have a location on the Lanham EDI side. So for example, inventory advice and sales price catalogs, those are very common in the .com world. An inventory advice is an 846, and the .coms always want to know what your inventory levels look like. So because we're embedded within nav, we've got your inventory count, and we're able to create an inventory advice on the EDI side and send that to the trade partner. Likewise with the sales price catalog. So not only do they want to know how much inventory you have in stock, they also want to know what their price is set up for that. So as most people are familiar with in nav, there's some pretty extensive pricing structures, and the price that you have set up for the customers will automatically be created whenever the EDI sales price catalog is created. And then you can send those files to the trade partner. So next, what I want to do is show you what an EDI data file looks like. This is one right here for the trade partner called Test Basic. I can see that right here. This might look like a bunch of numbers and different alpha characters, but as you become more familiar with it, you'll see it gets easier to read. So what I want to do is I'm going to take that same file, and this is a common segment. So an EDI data file is comprised of segments and elements. This PO1 is the segment, and then all this data thereafter are the elements. And so I'm going to break down this PO1 segment, and you'll see over here, this file has been brought into nav, and we've got our EDI received document, and this is my segment column. So it's taken all of this pieces of data, and it is translated it based upon my mapping. Next, more specifically, I want to look at the PO107. Okay, so the segment is PO1, the element is 07, and as you'll see here, I've got my 07 elements, and then I've mapped that to the EDI item cross-reference table. So on the sales line, there's a field called EDI item cross-reference, and it will contain this number, but in my trade partner setup, I'll cross-reference this part number to my nav part number so that my sales order is created using my items, but then I'm able to send out their part numbers whenever I send out any outbound files. All right, so now I'd like to actually go into the product and just briefly go over mapping so you can see how it works in Lanham and how easy it is. I'm going to stick with using this PO107 with the Test Basic Trade Partner, and we're going to look at an Amazon mapping guide. All right, so here I am in nav on the left side of my screen. And on the right side of my screen, I pulled up the Amazon purchase order mapping guide. So whenever you start to set up a relationship with the new trade partner, you will ask for all of their mapping guides for the different documents that they trade. We're going to stick with the 850 example. So over here, I've got the Amazon, it says purchase order, and this is X12, which is ANSI X12, and then the version number, just like you do version numbering on documentation, is a 4010. So back in nav, what I'm going to do is come to my trade partner list. These are all the different demo maps that we supply with the product. I'm going to look at Test Basic, and I'm going to go to their document list. These are all the documents I trade with Test Basic, but we're specifically just looking at the 850. So like I said, an EDI file consists of segments and elements. So for this document, I'm going to go to segments, and these are all the different segments that they have. I'm going to come over to my Amazon mapping guide and scroll down to the segment section, and you'll see all the different segments that are here. So BEG, REF, FOB, I've got those over here. I'm going to stick with the PO1 segment that we saw earlier. And we're just going to look at all the different elements that they have here. So we're in the PO1 segment. This is the O1 element. So I'm going to click on this segment, go to elements, and here's where I have all the mapping set up. So first, the assigned identification, that's their line number. So I have this set up here, and I created conditionals just because I chose to do that. It doesn't have to specifically be done like this, but I mapped their line number to the nav sales line EDI ID. They're probably going to want their line numbers back whenever you send outbound documents. That's why I have it mapped there. You can also do what's called an EDIN, and basically that's a housing location for data that's received that you don't need on the nav side, but you do need it whenever you're creating outbound documents. So I had that specified here, so I could call the same EDIN on my outbound document if I chose to map that way. Next, we're all familiar with the quantity, so I've mapped that to the sales line quantity. After that, my O3 element, I've got my unit of measures here. Now, they're sending in eaches and cases. Unfortunately, my units of measure are pieces in the Cronus database. So I have mapped to the EDI unit of measure table, and we'll go through the cross-reference table. So I would set up my cross-reference. Whenever they send in an each, I want to convert that to piece. Next, we've got the O4 element. That's the price that they think they're going to pay. You could map it to the sales line unit price. I actually want to see what they send in and compare it to mine. So we've created a field called EDI unit price. And if there is a discrepancy between the nav unit price and the EDI unit price, then it'll be flagged with price discrepancy so that some sort of intervention needs to take place whenever the pricing doesn't match. Okay, so I would just keep going down the list. I'm going to skip all the way down to my O7 element because we were showing that earlier. And here's my O7 element. I see I have a conditional, and I have it set up here to map to the sales line EDI item cross-reference table. So the part number that they send in, I'm going to cross-reference that to my part number. I also have it mapped, you don't have to do this, but I probably did this because I need this for some labeling, the EDI received document line info table, so I can pull that data back out when I'm creating labels such as UCC or GS128 labels. Okay, so that's really all there is to the mapping. So let's see what happens whenever we actually process a file. So I would have my lexicon set up, just like I've shown here, to deliver all my files to my common receive file path. As you see here, sales combo 1 file is out here in my common receive file. And I don't really have to look at that. I was just showing you so you see how Lexicom and the Lanham EDI product work together. Lanham EDI does come with the job queue, so I could completely automate this, but for time's sake, I'm going to run this report. The receive all EDI documents report has been brought in. It's showing that 3 files have been processed. I've got an 864, which is just a text message, an 840, which is a request for quote, and this is the one that we're specifically looking at, which is my 850. So a total of 3 process files. I don't really need to print this out. I'm just going to close it down. Now on my Role Center, you'll see here, I've got received documents for today. Those are those 3 files that we just did. And I'm going to skip down to this 850 right here. You'll see over here in the fact box on the right, I've got a sales order that was created. And this looks just like any sales order as if it were manually created. I'm going to point out a couple things here. There's that EDI item cross-reference number, cross-reference to my part number. Here's the eaches to piece cross-reference. Here's my pricing, and yes, I do have some price discrepancies, so I would need to get that worked out. I'll take you down to the EDI Fast tab. This is that internal document number that sticks with this sales order throughout its life cycle, so that from the EDI received document, I'll show you here in a minute, I can trace and see where this particular document stands and what's been done with it. This is my transaction date and time. And then over here on the right, I've got my trade partner and sell to, ship to, which are cross-referenced to my NAV customers. Now I would just process this order as usual, ship and invoice it, and then any outbound documents that are tagged to be sent out would be flagged to send. So just want to show you the trace. Here on my received documents, I can hit trace. Here's everything that's associated with that sales order. So I could navigate back to my sales order. This customer has discounts set up, so I can see all the discounts associated with it. But once I ship an invoice, those will be listed in here as well. All right, well, I hope that gives you a little bit better understanding of EDI and how it works and how to prepare for a new trade partner. Here I've got the EDI supported document list from Lanham. These documents are both sales side and purchase side, inbound and outbound, so it's a rather extensive list. And lastly, don't forget to check out our blog on the Lanham website. Here's the link to the Lanham blog. And if you come over here under EDI, we'll list different tips and tricks on mapping and getting set up for new trade partners, but I do want to specifically point you out to how to prepare for a new trade partner in 7 easy steps. This is a rather extensive list because I want it to be detail oriented, but once you get the hang of it, it's pretty quick to go through. So step number 1, get your mapping guides. So that's where I showed you the Amazon 850 mapping guide. So I hope that helps you get started with EDI. And thank you for joining this video.